Hello, I'm Liz Van Vliet, and welcome to the Assist with Impact podcast. Join me as I explore the competencies and capabilities that allow you to assist with impact. I'll be sharing practical tips, strategies, and insights that will help you move beyond what I call the order-taker zone and be that little hinge that can swing big doors. If you're ready to be more proactive and have more impact in your role, then this is the place for you. Let's get started with the episode. Well, hello, lovely listeners. It is so lovely to be here, back with you for episode 162 of the Assist with Impact podcast. And I'm going to keep saying this because there's new listeners and they might be confused. It's called Assist with Impact. It was previously called the Being Indispensable podcast. Anyway, moving right along. I am doing a solo episode this week. I had intended to be bringing you an interview that I have recently just done with a wonderful lady from Germany, but I actually have decided to postpone that interview because I wanted to do an episode that is literally, quite literally, a little love letter to the wonderful volunteers and people that contributed on the weekend just past to week one of the World Administrator Summit that is put on by the World Administrators Alliance. Now, I'm really hoping that I will have some of those new listeners that I met as a result of facilitating a breakout session at that week one event that was all about how we can elevate the role of the admin professional. It was called The Career Behind the Job. And before I go into any more details, I just want to share with you, for those of you that have not heard of the World Administrator Alliance, I want to make sure that if I do nothing else with this episode, well, my first thing is to just, as I said, this is just a massive little love letter to the work that the World Administrator, the WA Alliance, as they are known, is doing, but also a massive love letter and shout out to the wonderful people that were part of the week one event and have given up their time and energy. Some of us here in Australia and New Zealand and in other parts of the world were up literally in the middle of the night in order to be part of this event. But just let me tell you from the homepage of the World Administrators Alliance how they describe themselves. And I will put all the links to what I'm going to talk about in terms of the World Administrators Alliance and the summit and something called the Global Skills Matrix in the links to this show, in the show notes for this episode. So the WA Alliance is a non-profit trade association representing administrative associations, networks, professionals and industry partners across the globe. The aims of the WA Alliance are to guide, develop, influence and elevate the administrative profession. With the support of administrative associations and networks around the world, the WA Alliance will build a global community to enable administrative professionals the world over to speak with one voice. Well, let me tell you, being part of this summit, which is the second year I've been part of it. Last year I was on as an observer as part of my role with the Australian Institute of Office Professionals. I was just there to listen. Basically, every country has the opportunity to apply to put forward what are called either delegates or observers. And I was really delighted to see the representation from Australia, particularly from my friends at the Australian Institute of Office Professionals. This year led very ably by the wonderful Heather Batchelor. So shout out to you, Heather. But there were other representatives from Australia. There was Patricia Butera, who was there representing the Australian Institute of Office Professionals, and as an observer, actually as part of the World Administrators Alliance team, we have the tireless Christine Stewart, who has previously been a president of the Australian Institute of Office Professionals and was there representing the WA Alliance team as the partnership officer. And I was pleased to have Chris in the group that I was facilitating as my note taker. And I also note that we had Michelle Bowditch from the Australian Admin Awards as a delegate from Australia. So Australia was well represented, and so too was so many countries from around the world. And what I want to really give a shout out to is the representatives from countries around the world that are not first world countries, that are not countries where, we talk in the UK, in Australia, in the US, we talk about the cost of living crisis. But I had the privilege of being in my facilitator session with representatives from countries who are anything but flush with cash in terms of both their individual circumstance as well as from their organisation's perspective in order to be able to progress and advance the interests of office professionals. So my little love letter, this podcast episode, is a shout out to those people who I'm not going to name because I don't want those people to feel that I'm patronising or condescending to them. But if you are listening to this, I just want you to know that I see you and I hear you, and I valued the time and the energy that you put into being on that call, on that literally almost 5-hour webinar, to be able to speak and give voice to the concerns, to the challenges that are going on for admin professionals in your country. So I was absolutely delighted to see the absolute range of organisations, of associations that were represented at the World Administrator Summit, and particularly in the session that I facilitated that was all around the career behind the job. And my message for you, my lovely listeners, is if you are not following and supporting in some way the work of the World Administrator Alliance, then I would encourage you to do so. And one of the most fantastic documents that has come out of the World Administrator Alliance in these recent years is the Global Skills Matrix, which I will put a link to in the show notes as well. Because what this organisation is all about is not just talk, but action. And the Global Skills Matrix is a great testament to that. It is a document, it is a living, breathing document, and there are a host of other documents. And the thing that I absolutely love is the people that are out there advocating for these sorts of things, for change and for organisations, for countries to better support the work of administrative professionals are all volunteers. They are giving up their time and their energy. So I know this is a very short episode. I'm already looking at my time. It'll probably be around 10 minutes once I put it all together. But I just want to give a massive shout out to, the wonderful work of the volunteers, not just of the WA Alliance, but the delegates and the observers that I had the pleasure of interacting with. So I'm just going to give you a few names. I want to give a shout out to Carla from Italy, to Guyinda from Trinidad and Tobago, to Karen from Barbados, to Karen Kafaki from the UK, to Marion Lawrence from the UK, to Julia Schmidt from the International Management Assistance in Norway, who was in my group as an observer, and to Sherry Leaker from the USA, who was also there as an observer. I also want to give a massive shout out to, again, Chris Stewart for being my note taker and for the work of Helen Monument as the Alliance Chair, and the brilliant and absolute legend that is Eth Lloyd from New Zealand, who's really, I think it would not be an overstatement to say, is the passion and the energy behind this initiative. And I know there are other people that have been a part of it, but Eth Lloyd is somebody that I have so much respect for and is still on board the organisation as the Alliance advisor. So that's my episode for this week. I hope that some of you that were there listening, observing, contributing in my facilitated session are listening to this and can hear me telling you through this podcast how much it meant to me to be able to contribute in a small way by facilitating this session, and how excited and thrilled I am to be coming back this week over the weekend coming up to be able to present the report that Chris Stewart and I are putting together, so we can hopefully give voice in a summary form to the contributions that you made. And one final person that I want to give a shout out is the lovely Mohammed from Saudi Arabia, who did a delightful thing of bringing on one of his children to say hello to us. And it was such a thrill to be able to, from all around the world, send our good wishes to Mohammed's daughter. So that's my episode for this week. If you're not already following in some form or another, contributing in some form or another to the work of the World Administrators Alliance, I would encourage you to do that, because you want to be the change that you want to see in the world. And this is one way that you can do that for your fellow admin professionals. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see the show notes, head over to my website. It would be great if you haven't already done so. If you enjoyed the show, if you could kindly go to iTunes and leave a review. It helps other people find the show. Thanks for listening and have a great week.